You can't get the truth from the Bible. It's a proven fact that you can't get the truth from the Bible. If you could, there wouldn't be over 45,000 different denominations in the world. And all these so-called Christian churches that are Bible-based, they wouldn't be full of so much sin and ungodliness and confusion. You can't get the truth from the Bible. There is some truth recorded in the Bible, but you cannot glean it that way. If you could, then this would be a wonderful world that we live in, wouldn't it? All the Christians would be full of the Holy Spirit. They'd all be one. They'd all have the same mind. They would all have the nature of God in them. They wouldn't be lusting after the flesh, hating one another, killing one another. It's impossible to get the truth from the Bible. The only way you can get the truth is from the Spirit of truth, the Holy Spirit. Jesus Christ, he is our King. The Holy Father, our Creator, sent him for us, and he paid the price. He made the way for us, the sacrifice, so we could have the Holy Spirit, which is the seed of God, the holy seed of God, which when we're filled with the Holy Spirit, then we have the Spirit of truth in us, and the Spirit will teach us all things. We will know by nature the things of God, and we will have the nature of God in our inner man. Now our flesh will be sinful, but it won't have the power over our lives. Only the Holy Spirit will. Unless you, as you're tempted and you're tested and you go through life, if you give place to the flesh, then the flesh will win. But if you love God the most and you'll struggle, most of your struggles will be because you don't have understanding, because you can't get the truth out of the Bible. There's truth in the Bible, but if you could get it out of the Bible, then you wouldn't have all this confusion and all this trouble. So, for instance, Jesus Christ led Harlan from a child, and he guided him by the Spirit. He didn't have understanding, but then he filled him with the Holy Spirit. And then Harlan started studying. He wanted to learn about God. He knew him, but he didn't know who he was. He didn't know about him, but then he wanted to learn about him. And so what did he do? Naturally, he started reading the Bible and going to churches. Well, it was full of confusion. And he said, Lord, I want to know your doctrines. There's, they say women can preach, women can't preach. They say, once saved, always saved. No, you have to endure to the end. They say, you have to be baptized when you're 12. No, some of you are baptized when you're a baby. And there's so many different doctrines out there that it's ridiculous. And they're all people trying to be holy in the flesh. You think by doing certain things and not doing certain things, you'll pick one truth out of the Bible, and then you'll leave 9 million of them out because you can't do it. You have to keep all the law of God. If you're going to keep the written law of God, you have to keep it all, which is impossible. You don't serve God with your brain. The brain goes back to the dust of the earth. You're serving with your soul. And the only way you can do that is if you have the Holy Spirit in your soul. That's why the saints under the old covenant slept in the grave until Jesus paid the price so that the gift of the Holy Spirit could come, which regenerates us into the sons and daughters of God. Without the Holy Spirit, you're not of Christ. So even Harlan, a man that had been raised by God, guided in his youth, and then he had written the foundation teachings in him after he filled him with the Holy Spirit, and he didn't know what it was, but he knew there was a difference in him. He saw a big change in his life from one day to the next, because before the Lord was leading him and guiding him, but he was outside of him. He hadn't entered into his soul yet to change his nature. And he did a lot of things that other people did in the flesh. But after the Holy Spirit entered his soul, he wasn't that way anymore. And he told the Lord, he was looking at his hands, and he said, oh, Lord, there's nothing bad in my hands anymore. I can't do any harm. Don't let these people that are around me know that, because they'll beat the hound out of me if they know I won't fight back. And that's the way we feel, kind of defenseless, but the Lord will deliver us if we don't get in the flesh. But he didn't understand what was happening to him. And then he started studying the Bible and going to church. And he said, Lord, why are all these different churches? I thought they were all the same. What church should I go to? And what doctrine should I believe? And he would go down in the woods and pray under this tree, this pine tree in Georgia. And he'd pray and pray and pray. And he was down there one evening, and the Lord wrote in his heart with light from heaven. He said, he wrote the foundation teachings in his heart. And they've never changed, the 8 stones. And they're very solid foundation. But even then, Even after the Lord did that, Harlan was still, even though he was spiritual and led by the living Jesus Christ through the Spirit, the Bible still had way too much effect on him and too much control because he didn't know one principle. And until you know this one principle, these 5 words make all the difference in the world to set you free from the strong delusion, from Satan, so that you can be free to live for the living God in the Spirit. And those words are, the Bible is an idol. And Jesus spoke those words to him. The Bible is an idol. And he said, wow, now I can just be led by the living God through the Spirit. He was already prepared to receive this. He was the only person in the world that could receive that message. No one else would have believed it. They would have thought it was a devil. How could God? Jesus would never say anything about his written word. Well, he's not talking about the principles and the things that God taught and the people in the Bible. He's not saying there's anything wrong with that. He's saying you can't be controlled by that. The devil controls you through his ministers who misuse those scriptures. We're not led by the scriptures. We're led by the living Jesus Christ through the Holy Spirit. The scriptures were under the old covenant. And yes, the apostles wrote letters to some of the new saints. It was to them, Holy Spirit-filled people. And he didn't tell them not to study the old scriptures because they were a schoolmaster to bring us unto Christ, to make you wise unto what was to come. But when that which is perfect has come, is the Holy Spirit, and then you're led and guided by him. On the day of Pentecost, there was no compiled Bibles. There was an Old Testament Torah and what have you, but they didn't have that. Jesus had told his apostles to go and wait in Jerusalem until you be endued with power from on high. They didn't even really understand what was going to happen. But then on the day of Pentecost, the Holy Spirit fell on the 120. And they spoke in other tongues in the languages of those people that were in Jerusalem at that time, the wonderful works of God. And then they went forth to tell this truth. And what happened? All the law book people, they started persecuting them and hating them and beating them and telling them, teach no more in this name. And you think it's a name. It's not the name. It's the living Jesus Christ. It's the Spirit. They've changed his name how many different times, but he's the same today and forever in the Spirit. You have to know him by the Spirit. So trying to get the truth out of the Bible is like the old saying, they say, trying to squeeze blood out of a turnip or however you want to say it. You can study the Bible and you can get some truth and you can understand some truth, but it won't bring you into a living relationship with God. It won't bring you into salvation. You can have some true principles and still not be in God. How many people have Harlan and I encountered that think they know some truth? And they do, but they're not living in the truth because they're not living in the Spirit, which is truth. They're living in a truth they got into their mind. They might even take the truth that the Lord taught Harlan and I and made a doctrine out of it. And they're trying to live it through the flesh, through their knowledge, instead of letting God live in them. And it's the same old trick Satan plays on them over and over and over again. So it's impossible to get the truth out of the Bible. The Spirit is truth. And until you know that the Bible is an idol and you start searching for the living Jesus Christ with your heart in your spirit, and he fills you with the Holy Spirit, and then he starts leading you and guiding you by the Holy Spirit, and your life is in the Spirit, not controlled at all by the Bible or what you think you know. You got to get all that out of your mind and let the living God lead you by the Holy Spirit, because the Holy Spirit is truth. Anything else, you're going to end up on the wrong side of God. So you can't get the truth out of the Bible. It's impossible. The truth is in the Spirit, the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is truth, and you only get the Holy Spirit from the living Jesus Christ when you give up living after the flesh and you want to do his will only, and you don't want to use him to do what you want to do to have a good life in the flesh or in religion. You give up your life, a sacrifice to him, and he will use you according to his will. So you can't get the truth out of the Bible. The Bible is an idol, and if you try, it will take you to hell. And that's the truth.
Hot coat on my blood, most goodbye. Goodbye to each tear and each sigh. This world where I my world goodbye. I won't have these blues anymore when I step across to that shore, and I'll never find